You're scrolling through your phone right now, looking for something that matters. You've probably watched 3 other videos before this one, searching for that one piece of content that will finally make you feel like your time wasn't wasted. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not looking for entertainment. You're looking for meaning. And that search, that desperate hunt for significance in everything you do, is slowly destroying your ability just to exist. But what if I told you that your addiction to meaning is the very thing keeping you from actually living a meaningful life? Let me paint you a picture. It's Sunday evening, and you're sitting on your couch. You've got 2 hours of free time before the week starts again. But instead of just relaxing, instead of just being, you're anxious. You're thinking, how should I spend this time? Should I read that book everyone says will change my life? Should I start that side project? Should I learn a new skill? Because God forbid you just sit there and do nothing. God forbid you waste these precious 2 hours on something that doesn't have a deeper purpose or a greater meaning. Sound familiar? This is what I call the meaning trap, and almost everyone is caught in it. We've been conditioned to believe that every single moment of our lives needs to count for something. Every experience needs to teach us a lesson. Every relationship needs to help us grow. Every setback needs to have a silver lining. Every choice needs to align with our purpose. And if something doesn't have meaning, if it doesn't contribute to our personal growth or our life mission or our legacy, then it's a waste. It's frivolous. It's beneath us. But here's what nobody tells you. This constant search for meaning, this relentless need to extract significance from every moment, is exhausting. It's turned your life into a never-ending performance review where you're both the employee and the harsh manager who's never satisfied. You can't just watch a movie anymore. You have to analyze its themes and what it says about the human condition. You can't just have a conversation. You have to make sure it's deep and meaningful. You can't just take a walk. You have to use it as an opportunity for mindfulness, exercise, or podcast learning. Everything has to serve a purpose. Everything has to mean something. And the cruel irony? The more you chase meaning, the more meaningless everything starts to feel. Because when you're constantly evaluating whether something is meaningful enough, you're not actually present for it. You're not experiencing it. You're just judging it. You're like a food critic who's so busy analyzing every bite that they forget to taste the meal. Let me tell you where this addiction comes from. We live in an age of unprecedented choice and freedom. Our grandparents didn't have this problem. They didn't wake up every morning wondering if their job aligned with their authentic self or if their hobbies were helping them achieve self-actualization. They just lived. They worked. They came home. They spent time with family. They had hobbies. And that was enough. But somewhere along the way, we decided that wasn't enough anymore. We decided that life needed to be more than just living. It needed to be optimized, purposeful, intentional, and meaningful. Social media made it worse. Now we're constantly exposed to other people's highlight reels, their meaningful moments, their purpose-driven lives. Everyone's on a journey. Everyone's pursuing their passion. Everyone's living their best life. And if you're just existing, if you're just going through the motions without some grand narrative or deeper purpose, you feel like you're falling behind. You feel like you're wasting your one precious life. The self-help industry jumped on this bandwagon too. Suddenly, there were thousands of books, courses, and podcasts, all promising to help you find your purpose, discover your why, and create meaning in your life. And don't get me wrong, some of this stuff is genuinely helpful. But it also created this unspoken pressure that if you haven't found your purpose yet, if you don't have a clear sense of meaning, then something is wrong with you. You're incomplete. You're not living up to your potential. But here's what I want you to understand. This whole concept of needing to find meaning in everything is actually a relatively modern, relatively Western, relatively privileged problem. For most of human history, for most people on this planet right now, life wasn't about finding meaning. It was about survival. It was about getting through the day, feeding your family, and staying safe. And you know what? Those lives weren't meaningless. They were just lived, not performed or optimized or Instagram storied. The truth is, meaning isn't something you find. It's not something you have to search for or create or manifest. Meaning is something that emerges naturally when you're actually engaged with life, when you're present, when you're connected to people and activities and experiences without constantly asking, "But what does this all mean?" Think about the last time you laughed so hard your stomach hurt. In that moment, were you thinking about whether that laughter was meaningful? Were you analyzing whether it contributed to your personal growth? No, you were just laughing. You were just present. And that moment probably felt more alive, more real, more rich than hours of purposeful, meaningful activities. Or think about the last time you helped someone, not because it aligned with your values or because it made you feel like a good person, but just because they needed help and you were there. That probably felt more genuinely meaningful than any carefully curated act of purpose-driven living. Here's the paradox that will blow your mind. The moments in life that end up being the most meaningful are usually the ones you weren't trying to make meaningful. They're the unexpected conversations, the spontaneous adventures, the quiet afternoons with nothing particular happening. But you can't experience those moments if you're too busy evaluating whether they're meaningful enough to deserve your attention. This addiction to meaning also creates another problem. It makes you incredibly fragile. Because if everything in your life needs to have meaning, then what happens when you face the inevitable periods of meaninglessness? What happens when you go through the mundane, boring, ordinary stretches that are just part of being human? You panic. You think something's wrong. You feel like you're wasting your life. And that panic pushes you to make drastic changes, to chase the next meaningful thing, to constantly reinvent yourself in search of that elusive sense of purpose. But life isn't always meaningful. Sometimes life is just doing the dishes. Sometimes it's sitting in traffic. Sometimes it's having the same conversation you've had 100 times before. Sometimes it's lying in bed, unable to sleep, thinking about nothing in particular. And that's okay. That's not a bug in the system. That's a feature. That's just life. The people who are most at peace aren't the ones who've found the most meaning. They're the ones who've learned to be okay with meaninglessness. They're the ones who can do the dishes without making it a mindfulness practice. They can sit in traffic without turning it into an opportunity for personal growth. They can have a boring afternoon without feeling like they're failing at life. Now, let me be clear about something. I'm not saying meaning is bad or that having a sense of purpose is wrong. Purpose can be wonderful. Having things that matter to you, having goals and values and things you care about, that's all good. The problem isn't the meaning itself. The problem is the addiction to meaning. The problem is when you can't tolerate anything that doesn't have meaning. The problem is when you've turned your entire existence into a relentless search for significance. It's like food. Food is necessary and good. But if you become obsessed with food, if every moment of your day revolves around what you're going to eat next, if you can't function without constantly consuming, that's a problem. That's an addiction. Same thing with meaning. A healthy relationship with meaning allows for both meaningful moments and meaningless moments. An addiction to meaning can't tolerate the meaningless parts, and that intolerance becomes its own form of suffering. So how do you know if you're addicted to meaning? Here are some signs. You feel guilty when you're not being productive or purposeful. You can't enjoy simple pleasures without justifying them somehow. You're constantly questioning whether what you're doing matters. You feel anxious during unstructured time. You struggle to be present because you're always thinking about whether the current moment is significant enough. You compare your life to others and feel like you're falling behind in the meaning department. You've read countless self-help books, but still feel like you haven't found your purpose. You can't make decisions without extensive analysis of what they mean for your life path. You feel like you're always searching for something, but you're not quite sure what. If any of that sounds familiar, congratulations, you're probably addicted to meaning. And like any addiction, the first step is recognizing you have a problem. The second step is understanding what the addiction is really about. Because here's the thing, the addiction to meaning isn't really about meaning at all. It's about control. It's about the illusion that if you can just find the right meaning, the right purpose, the right why, then your life will make sense. Then you'll know what to do. Then you'll feel okay. But life doesn't work that way. Life is messy and complicated and often doesn't make sense. And no amount of meaning-making is going to change that fundamental uncertainty. In fact, the more you try to create meaning as a way to control uncertainty, the more anxious you become, because deep down you know that meaning is just a story you're telling yourself, and stories can always be questioned. So how do you break free from this addiction? How do you learn to live without constantly needing everything to mean something? It starts with permission. Permission to waste time. Permission to do things that don't contribute to your growth. Permission to have experiences that don't teach you anything. Permission to just exist without justification. This might sound simple, but for someone addicted to meaning, it's terrifying. The idea of wasting time feels almost immoral. But here's what you need to understand. Time that you enjoy wasting is not wasted time. That phrase gets thrown around a lot, but really sit with it. If you spend 2 hours watching trashy TV and you enjoy it, that's not a waste. That's living. The waste is when you spend 2 hours watching trashy TV while simultaneously feeling guilty about it and telling yourself you should be doing something more meaningful. Now you're not enjoying the TV and you're not doing the meaningful thing. That's a waste. Start small. Permit yourself to do one meaningless thing each day. Take a walk with no destination and no purpose. Sit and stare out the window. Play a game just for fun, not to improve your strategic thinking or whatever. Cook a meal without making it an exercise in creativity or mindfulness. Just cook, eat, clean up. No deeper significance required. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your brain will protest. It will tell you this is a waste. It will try to sneak meaning back in. Are you taking a walk? Great. Let's make it a mindfulness walk. Are you cooking? Perfect opportunity to practice being present. Catch yourself doing this. Notice when you're trying to turn something simple into something significant. And gently let it go. Just walk. Just cook. Just be. Another key practice is learning to appreciate the ordinary. We've become so focused on peak experiences and optimal moments that we've forgotten how to appreciate the mundane. But the mundane is where most of life happens. If you can't find richness in the ordinary, you're going to spend most of your life waiting for the meaningful moments and missing everything in between. Try this exercise. Tomorrow, pay attention to the most boring part of your day. Maybe it's your commute. Maybe it's folding laundry. Maybe it's waiting for your coffee to brew. Don't try to make it meaningful. Don't try to practice mindfulness or gratitude or any other technique. Just notice it. Really notice it. The details, the sensations, the little things you usually tune out. You might be surprised at how interesting the boring stuff becomes when you're actually paying attention to it instead of judging it for not being meaningful enough. You also need to stop comparing your life to other people's narratives. Remember, you're seeing everyone else's highlight reel, their carefully curated moments of meaning and purpose. You're not seeing the hours they spent scrolling on their phone or the days they felt lost or the times they binge-watched Netflix in their pajamas. Everyone has those moments. Everyone has stretches of meaninglessness, but nobody posts about them. So you end up thinking everyone else has figured out how to live a constantly meaningful life, and you're the only one struggling. You're not. You're just the only one being honest with yourself about it. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the search for meaning is actually a way of avoiding life. It's easier to spend hours reading books about finding your purpose than it is to actually engage with the messy, complicated, often disappointing reality of daily existence. It's easier to dream about your meaningful future than to deal with your meaningless present. But life is happening now, not in the future when you've finally found your purpose, not in the past when things made more sense. Now. And now is often boring and ordinary and not particularly significant. The goal isn't to think about meaning. The goal is to have a lighter relationship with it, to hold it more loosely, to let meaning be something that shows up sometimes, rather than something you're constantly chasing. Think of meaning like a butterfly. If you run after it, trying to catch it, it will always fly away. But if you just go about your life, tending your garden, enjoying the sunshine, sometimes the butterfly will land on your shoulder. You can't force it. You can't manufacture it. You can only create the conditions for it to emerge naturally. And those conditions? They're surprisingly simple. Connection with other people, not a deep, meaningful connection all the time, just regular human contact. Engagement with activities you genuinely enjoy, not because they're improving you, just because they're enjoyable. Presence in your actual life instead of constantly living in your head, analyzing whether your life is meaningful enough. Acceptance of the full range of human experience, including the boring parts, the sad parts, the confusing parts. When you stop requiring everything to be meaningful, something interesting happens. Life becomes lighter. You become less anxious. You stop second-guessing yourself constantly. You make decisions more easily because you're not trying to decode what they mean for your entire life trajectory. You enjoy things more because you're actually experiencing them instead of evaluating them. And paradoxically, your life probably becomes more meaningful, not because you're trying to make it meaningful, but because you're actually living it. There's also something deeply freeing about accepting that maybe, just maybe, life doesn't have to mean anything. Maybe you don't need a grand purpose. Maybe you don't need to leave a legacy. Maybe you don't need to figure out your why. Maybe you're just here, alive, conscious, able to experience things. And maybe that's enough. Not everything has to be a lesson. Not everything has to contribute to your growth. Not everything has to matter in some cosmic sense. This doesn't mean becoming nihilistic or checking out of life. It means becoming more fully human. It means embracing the full spectrum of existence, including the parts that don't fit into a neat narrative of purpose and meaning. It means being okay with contradiction, with uncertainty, with not knowing. It means measuring your life by how you actually feel, not by how meaningful you think it should be. Let me tell you something that might change your perspective. The most meaningful moments in your life probably weren't the ones you planned. They weren't the result of some purpose-driven strategy. They were accidents, surprises, and unexpected gifts. That conversation that changed everything? You weren't seeking it. That person who became so important to you? You didn't manifest them with your vision board. That realization that shifted your whole worldview? It came out of nowhere. Meaning sneaks up on you when you're not looking for it. But here's the catch. Meaning can only sneak up on you if you're actually present in your life. If you're constantly in your head, analyzing and evaluating and searching, you miss the moments when meaning naturally emerges. It's like searching for your glasses while they're on your head. You're looking so hard for something that's already there that you can't see it. So what would it look like to live without this addiction to meaning? It would look like a regular Tuesday where you go to work and have lunch, come home, make dinner, watch TV, and go to bed, and you don't once question whether it was meaningful enough. It would look like having a conversation with someone and just enjoying the conversation, not trying to make it deep or figure out what it means about your relationship. It would look like making a decision based on what you actually want, not what you think will lead to the most meaningful outcome. It would look like being bored sometimes and being okay with that. It would look like life. Just regular, ordinary, beautiful, boring, frustrating, delightful life. And here's the really radical part. It would look like being kind to yourself when you're not feeling particularly purposeful or meaningful. It would look like recognizing that you're a human being, not a human doing. Your worth isn't determined by how meaningful your life is, or how clearly you've defined your purpose, or how optimized your existence is. You're worthy just because you exist. Full stop. No qualifications needed. This is hard for a lot of people to accept because we've been so conditioned to earn our worth through achievement and growth and meaningful living. But what if you didn't have to earn it? What if you could just be here, flawed and uncertain and still figuring things out? And that was perfectly okay. The addiction to meaning often comes from a deeper wound, a sense that we're not enough as we are. So we try to make our lives mean something to justify our existence, to prove that we matter. But you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to justify your existence. You're here. That's all the justification you need. Breaking free from the addiction to meaning isn't about becoming lazy or apathetic. It's about becoming more alive. It's about being able to fully experience your life instead of constantly evaluating it. It's about freeing up all that mental energy you've been using to search for significance and using it to actually engage with the world around you. It's about trading the exhausting quest for meaning for the simple joy of existence. Now I want you to think about something. What would you do differently if you stopped needing everything to mean something? Would you take that art class even though you'll never be a professional artist? Would you spend more time with people you enjoy, even if the relationships don't help you grow? Would you pursue hobbies that are just fun with no productivity attached? Would you allow yourself to rest without calling it self-care? Would you make choices based on what sounds good rather than what sounds meaningful? Here's my challenge to you. For the next week, try to catch yourself every time you're evaluating whether something is meaningful enough. Every time you're about to judge an activity or moment or experience as a waste if it doesn't contribute to your growth or purpose. Just notice it. You don't have to change it yet. Just become aware of how often you're doing it. You might be shocked. Most people who try this realize they're doing it almost constantly. Every moment is being weighed and measured and judged for its significance. Once you've built that awareness, start experimenting with letting it go. When you catch yourself judging something as not meaningful enough, ask yourself, am I enjoying it? Am I engaged? Am I present? If the answer is yes, then it's not a waste, regardless of whether it has a deeper meaning. Let yourself off the hook. Permit yourself to just be. This is going to feel weird at first. It might even feel wrong. Your brain has been trained to seek meaning the way a drug addict seeks their next fix. Breaking that pattern takes time and practice. Be patient with yourself. You're not going to suddenly become a Zen master who never thinks about meaning. That's not the goal. The goal is just to loosen the grip a little bit, to create some space between you and the constant need for significance. And you know what? Some days you're going to fail at this. Some days you're going to fall right back into the meaning trap. You're going to spend all afternoon analyzing whether your life is on the right track. You're going to feel guilty about wasting time. You're going to compare yourself to others and feel like you're falling behind. That's okay. That's part of being human. Don't make it mean something. Don't turn your failure to break free from meaning into another thing that has to mean something. Just notice it, be gentle with yourself, and start again tomorrow. The beautiful thing about breaking free from this addiction is that life becomes simpler. Not easier necessarily, but simpler. Because you're not carrying around this constant burden of having to make everything count. You can just let things be what they are. A walk is just a walk. A meal is just a meal. A conversation is just a conversation. And that simplicity, that directness, that's where real peace lives. I also want to address something important. Some of you might be thinking, but what about people who've actually found their purpose? What about people who are living meaningful lives? Isn't that better than just existing? And sure, if you've genuinely found something you care deeply about, something that gives your life direction, that's wonderful. But here's the thing. People who have genuinely found their purpose aren't addicted to meaning. They're not constantly questioning whether what they're doing is meaningful enough. They're just doing what matters to them and not worrying so much about whether every single moment contributes to their grand purpose. They can have a lazy Sunday without an existential crisis. They can do meaningless things without feeling like failures. The addiction to meaning is different. It's frantic. It's anxious. It's never satisfied. Real meaning, when it exists, is quieter. It's more grounded. It doesn't need constant validation or analysis. It just is. So here's what I want you to take away from this. You are not broken if you haven't found your purpose. You are not wasting your life if every moment isn't deeply meaningful. You are not falling behind because you sometimes just exist without optimizing, growing, or learning. You're just human. And being human includes a whole lot of ordinary, mundane, not particularly significant moments. And those moments aren't the enemy. They're not obstacles to overcome. They're your life. They're all we get. The question isn't how do I make my life more meaningful? The question is, can I be okay with my life as it is, meaning and all, meaninglessness and all? Can I stop fighting reality and just be here for it? Can I let go of the need for everything to add up to something and just let things be what they are? Because here's the secret. Life doesn't need to mean anything to be worth living. You don't need a grand purpose to justify your existence. You don't need every moment to count. You just need to be here, present, alive, engaged. That's it. That's the whole thing. Everything else is just stories we tell ourselves to feel better about the fundamental uncertainty of existence. And maybe, just maybe, when you stop searching so desperately for meaning, when you stop trying to make everything significant, you'll find that your life was already full of meaning all along. Not the manufactured, Instagram-worthy, purpose-driven kind of meaning, but the quiet, subtle, often overlooked meaning that exists in simple human moments. In laughter with friends, in a good meal, in the way sunlight hits your wall in the afternoon, in helping someone, in learning something new, in feeling something deeply, in being present for your actual life instead of the meaningful life you think you should be living. So what would change for you if you permitted yourself to let go of this addiction to meaning? What would open up in your life if you stopped requiring everything to be significant? I genuinely want to know. Drop a comment below and tell me about one meaningless thing you're going to let yourself enjoy this week without guilt or justification. Just something simple that pleases you but doesn't contribute to your growth or purpose. Let's start a meaningless revolution together. And remember, your life doesn't need to mean anything to be beautiful. It doesn't need to mean anything to be worth living. It doesn't need to mean anything to be enough. You are enough, exactly as you are, meaning or no meaning. So stop searching so hard and start living. Because life is happening right now, and it's not waiting for you to figure out what it all means. If this video resonated with you, if it made you think differently about your relationship with meaning, hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm share this message with other people who might need to hear it. And if you want more content about living more freely, more authentically, more peacefully in this chaotic world, subscribe to the channel. Let's build a community of people who are learning to just be instead of constantly becoming. I'll see you in the next video.